Hey folks, Joe DeAngelis here with, I guess, my review for The Last Jedi, the latest Star Wars films, Episode 8. People have been looking forward to this one, or not, depending on how you felt about The Force Awakens. In any case, I'm here to talk about it today. I've seen the film twice. I feel like it is the kind of film you need to digest more than once to really. I feel that way with a lot of films. You really need to watch it at least two or three times to fully process it. Because again, I saw it like the first night that it came out, like opening Thursday, and that opinion can be very wildly different from when you watch it again with a different mindset. So, with that said, I've seen the film twice, and I got to say, I liked it. Uh, it has issues, and some of the stuff I can understand why people are pretty mad. So this is a hard movie to talk about without getting into spoilers. So I will get into spoilers for this video. The movie's been out for like a week, and by looks of the box office, if you've already seen Star Wars last week, you're probably moving on to something else. Star Wars took like a 77% drop, which makes sense because there are 6 new wide releases coming out this Christmas weekend. So Last Jedi, I liked it. I didn't love it. There's a lot of stuff I did love. However, some of that stuff was in the Luke Skywalker Rey story, where they're on Octu, I believe the planet is called, and Luke is training Rey and showing her why the Jedi need to end. You know, and then there's also Poe Dameron's subplot, which kind of feels like it could have been great, but I feel like they didn't follow through on the consequences on that, and like it could have been a lot better. And then there's the Finn Rose subplot that everybody's been talking about, Canto Bite. Easily one of the worst things I've seen in a Star Wars movie, if I'm being honest. That whole subplot was, wow, I couldn't believe Lucasfilm let that happen, honestly. I was like, considering the stuff they're going through with, like, they went through with Rogue One, and then they went through with the Han Solo movie, and they let Rian Johnson handle this like the way they did. Ugh, wow. Clearly, Lucasfilm needs some. I think Lucasfilm does need some administrative changes. Aside from that, though, let's talk about the stuff I didn't like first. Really, the Finn Rose subplot. It's first off, the Canto Bite. Maybe in any other sci-fi movie it would look cool, but in Star Wars it looked incredibly generic. And I get you need to try new things in Star Wars to see what works. This is an example of something that does not work. And this takes up a good chunk of the movie too. It's not like it's like a handful of moments that you can be like, oh, I can easily overlook that. Like there's some movies I watch where I'm like, oh, okay, they did that. That's fine. Whatever. I can move on. With this one, it's hard because it's such an integral portion of the story. And it does give a good message, at the end, where a lot of us think that, this whole battle is just a resistance against the First Order, and it's like there's a whole other like evil to this. Like there's the people who just sell weapons. A movie Bob or one reviewer put it that it's great to see Canto Bite because it's like the rich person's version of the Mos Eisley Cantina, and I think that's kind of cool in theory. But it just didn't fully work for me because I just didn't care for Rose as a character, for one. Kelly Marie Tran does a fine enough job as the character. She does the best she can with the material she's given. It just didn't work for me as a character. It's just kind of got a little annoying in parts, a little overly preachy. But Finn does learn a good lesson from this, I guess. It's just I wish they were able to do it better, especially because Finn was a great character in the last movie, and you kind of wasted him here. And then not to mention Captain Phasma wasted. Sometimes that happens. I get it. That was somebody I was like really upset that you just kind of threw out the window. Like we didn't see Captain Phasma till like the very end of the movie, and then she gets killed. So she literally is just the Boba Fett of this cycle. Will she come back? Probably. I don't know. I hope she doesn't. I just end it. And then there's the Benicio Del Toro character, DJ, I think he's called. I don't even remember him being called DJ. And it just felt like he wandered on set and just kind of did his own thing. And they were like, should we just take this guy off? And they're like, let's just let him. He's Benicio Del Toro. Let's let him work. And yeah, it was just like, and I get what the point was with his character and all that. The kind of like, he played both sides, blah, blah, blah. But like one of my friends was saying, he's dollar store Lando, and it just makes me more angry that Lando isn't in these new movies. Just terrible. Let's see, Poe. Now Poe's subplot is interesting because it's like a mutiny subplot, and he has to learn that he can't just destroy things. You can't just be a flashy hero. You have to sometimes be more conservative in your actions. Sometimes there's a method to the madness. These commanders. But I felt like he didn't really get any consequences from it. Like there was never a scene where he was locked up. He gets stunned by Leia and demoted once. That was it. That was the extent of the consequences. In the beginning of the movie, it seemed like they were going to go in a really interesting direction with the Dreadnought scene. How basically Poe's actions led them to waste a lot of their fighters and a lot of their bombers. Like in any other case, he'd be in chains or something, or at least like stripped of a lot of command stuff at the very least. But I'm glad Oscar Isaac is given more to do this time around because he's a great actor for one, and it's just nice to have him do more in this film, I guess. Let's see. And then the Rey Luke stuff I think is just fantastic. And then also added onto that Kylo Ren. The acting in this movie was great. That's what I loved about Force Awakens and The Last Jedi is that the new characters, I think, are very well acted. I think particular acting standouts in this movie are from Mark Hamill and Adam Driver. Mark Hamill I know a lot of people are criticizing Luke in this movie, but I think this is pretty much exactly what I would have expected Luke to become. He would have been a hermit at some point, guys. That's just it seems like the Jedi way. Yoda and Obi-Wan and some of the other characters, they become hermits. And Luke, I know, like, this is a little, I hate him. He's kind of a jerk, and he's kind of a big baby. Just like I didn't get that impression. I found this was a guy who was incredibly broken, because the ideals that he thought were like worth pursuing, he in his own way discovered, came to realize they're not exactly the way he should go. Like he nearly kills Kylo, just to prevent another Order 66 style destruction of the Jedi. And it ends up failing, failing miserably. And this guy just disconnected himself from the Force. I don't know what else to say about it. I think a lot of people just wanted incredibly badass Luke Skywalker from the end of Return of the Jedi, just older, which, I liked Luke's character in that movie. It's just being just a cool dude with the green lightsaber. I don't think made sense. And that's why I love the final fight between him and Kylo so much. It might actually be one of my favorite encounters in the whole saga, where these two, they don't clash lightsabers. Luke is just using his I'm just going to call it Force astral projection to fight Kylo. And it's actually works with the movie, I think. And it also gives Luke a perfect send-off, I think. I think it was just a wonderful, beautiful moment in the film. Other stuff from the Luke stuff that I liked, it was Yoda. Yoda pops in this movie as a puppet, played by Frank Oz, and he teaches Luke stuff. Luke is, even though Luke is a Jedi master, Luke is still learning. And Yoda gives us great lines, about the fate of all masters being that they are the things that their apprentices move away from or move on from. That failure is the greatest teacher. And Yoda just maybe the dialogue for Yoda in this sequence was perfectly written. again, Daisy Ridley's just great in both of these movies. I think she's incredible. I think this time around, Rey is definitely more interesting. And what else is great too, speaking of Rey and also Snoke, is that this movie is basically a middle finger to any fan theories people had after they saw The Force Awakens. People were like, is Rey Luke's daughter? Is Rey Obi-Wan's daughter? Is Rey a clone of Palpatine? Who knows? Is Snoke Palpatine? Is Snoke Mace Windu? Is Snoke Darth Plagueis? And turns out, nope, Snoke just was a powerful Force user, very powerful Force user, played by Andy Serkis, and he gets killed. He gets killed by Kylo Ren, and you think, oh, maybe Kylo redeems himself. It's like, no, Kylo just gets over being an apprentice and just becomes the supreme leader. That's all that happens. It actually makes me think of Revenge of the Sith, the game, where the alternate ending is you play as Anakin, you kill Obi-Wan, and then you kill the Emperor and take over the galaxy. And if you're going to borrow anything from the prequel stuff, that's something you borrow from. Which another good thing I want to mention is that they also, I like with these movies that Last Jedi and Rogue One make me believe that the prequels did take place in the same universe. And I know that seems silly to some people, but watching the original trilogy, just the original trilogy and the prequels, I rarely believe they took place in the same universe. Whereas with Last Jedi, the way they connect it makes sense. Like when Luke's talking about the hypocrisy of the Jedi and how the Jedi have failed, talks about Darth Sidious and how he's able to easily wipe out the Jedi. I was one of my favorite parts, just talking about the Jedi weren't perfect. So there's that. Again, going back to the bad stuff, I guess, I don't know. It's so hard because it takes up so much of the movie, but at the same time, the stuff that's really good is really good. Some of the Saber combat in this movie is excellent. The scene with Kylo and Rey versus the Praetorian Guards, excellent. Luke versus Kylo, that Battle of Crate I really loved a lot, honestly. That whole sequence where the rebels are kind of huddled up in this giant, behind this giant wall, and the First Order is has all their forces and they're ready to destroy them. I thought that really worked well. And again, all of the Luke stuff was perfect. I thought might be Mark Hamill's best performance out of the movies that he's been in Star Wars. One thing that people have been having a lot of controversies about is Carrie Fisher's, Leia's, being able to survive in space and then float into her ship. I guess I could see why people would be bothered by that, but it kind of makes me think our audiences are just too cynical. I mean, this is a space fantasy franchise, where people can come back as Force ghosts. In one of the video games, you had somebody take down a Star Destroyer, and the most ridiculous thing is that a lady can preserve herself just long enough in space to get inside the ship again. I didn't think it was that silly. Maybe the effects were silly. I could see that at least. But here's the other thing with that too, is that this is the last time we're getting Carrie Fisher. It's not ever going to matter if Leia uses the Force or some nonsense in any of the expanded universe that Disney provided in the cartoons or the comics or TV show, whatever, because that's not Carrie Fisher. People always wanted to see Leia in the movies, have some Force abilities, and she, in this movie she just shows it. And again, it could have been a lot worse, and I'm going to stick to that defense, honestly, because I didn't think it was that bad. There are other things in this movie that are far worse than Carrie Fisher floating in space and living. Some standout shots when Admiral Holdo takes the Resistance cruiser and books it at light speed into Snoke's ship. Genuinely, a moment that made me gasp in the theater. One of the most impressive Star Wars shots in the whole movie. One of the best whole things, and one of the best parts in the whole, one of the best visual things in the whole series, I would say. Some of the humor works and doesn't work. The Luke stuff was funny. The scene where Rey's reaching out and she's oh, I can feel the Force, and Luke's just hits her with a leaf thing, a blade of grass, and that was funny. A lot of his stuff worked very well. It made sense for his character. Some of the Poe stuff in the beginning with Hux, and like, really? You're going with that? And I mean, okay, whatever. It wasn't the worst thing in the world, but again, I didn't expect it from Star Wars. You know, a lot of my friends have told me I haven't really seen any of Rian Johnson's films, but they tell me that's a characteristic of Rian Johnson. Let's see. There's not much else I can really say about this movie, except I liked it quite a bit, and I'm going to plan on seeing it at least one more time before it leaves theaters. It's just, you know, I wish they had changed some things with the Canto Bite sequences, but everything else I think works very well. I think the other thing I want to bring up with Kylo is that, oh, I forgot to bring up Kylo and Rey's thing. You know, they had their Force connection scenes were actually really well done, I thought. That just made sense to me. It was really good. And this Kylo is developing into a very interesting character in these movies. He's not just Darth Vader. So I appreciate that. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. If you like this, you want to see more, leave a comment, like, subscribe. I just reached 400 subscribers, so thank you. I need to get back to what I do with the silent films reviews. I know that, but I figure you guys want to hear some of my thoughts on a recent movie. So anyway, see you guys later.